Formula One is one of the most popular sports in the world right now. And while most of us have a general idea of the sport, there's a lot more happening beneath the surface. So today we're going to look at some uncommon facts about Formula One that make it truly one of a kind. Almost every driver begins their career in karting as early as 4 or 5 years old, and by the time they're 12 to 14, they're already competing internationally. But here's the catch. The road to F1 is incredibly expensive, costing anywhere between $5 to $8 million across karting, junior formulas, and Formula 2. Talented drivers without financial backing often drop out, which is why paid drivers are still a part of the sport. This path is as much about skill as it is about access to funding or a major sponsor. Many F1 teams like Red Bull and Mercedes have junior academies to support young talent, but even then, the journey remains extremely challenging for most. Now let's talk about how the F1 races are hosted. Many people might think that building an FIA Grade 1 circuit is enough to bring Formula One to their country, but it's actually not that simple. Hosting a Formula One race is a complex, multi-year process that involves government approval, major financial investment, logistical planning, and full compliance with FIA regulations. Inviting the F1 circus isn't free, not even close. Race promoters must pay a hosting fee to Formula One management, which typically ranges from $20 to $55 million per year, depending on the venue and the terms of the contract. In most cases, local or national governments provide financial and logistical support, covering things like police presence, traffic management, and emergency medical services. The hosting fee grants the promoter the rights to organize and market the event, but Formula One retains the bulk of the revenue from broadcasting, global sponsorships, and branding. This financial model is why some historic circuits, like Hockenheim, have disappeared from the calendar as they simply couldn't afford to keep up. After each race, there's a full review covering fan attendance, economic impact, safety performance, and overall logistics. Based on that, F1 and the promoter decide whether to renew or renegotiate the deal. So yeah, hosting an F1 race, easier said than done. We all know that the podium finishers in F1 each get a trophy. Now, you might think those shiny trophies go on the driver's mantelpieces, but that's usually not the case. In most instances, the team keeps the original trophy while the driver gets a replica or sometimes no trophy at all. Teams typically display them at their headquarters or in hospitality suites as part of their legacy. In fact, Lewis Hamilton once admitted he didn't even know where his pole position trophies were or how many he had won. Have you ever wondered what happens to all those used tyres after a race weekend, considering teams are given fresh ones every time? Well, F1 teams don't keep or reuse them. In fact, around 3,000 tyres are used across all teams during a single race weekend. After each race, Pirelli collects the used tyres and sends them off for recycling or energy recovery. They're either shredded and repurposed for civil engineering projects or used to generate energy through incineration. Pirelli also studies the DEG and temperature data from the used tyres to improve and develop new compounds for future races. Speaking of tyres, there was a time when multiple tyre manufacturers were involved and the restrictions were far more lenient. Back in the 1950s and early 60s, teams weren't tied to exclusive tyre contracts. It wasn't unheard of for a team to run Dunlops at the front and Engelberts at the rear, depending on grip and wear. Teams often chose tyres based on track-specific demands rather than brand loyalty. That's impossible today, as F1 has a single tyre supplier, currently Pirelli, and strict rules that prevent any mix and match strategies. Honestly, it would be interesting if F1 brought that back. It could reduce the monopoly of a single supplier and add more variation and unpredictability to tyre strategies. In recent times in Formula One, we usually see 1 or 2 teams dominating, with the top 4 often taking most of the wins. The world champion typically ends the season with the highest number of victories. However, in 1982, Keke Rosberg won the title with just 1 victory, the fewest ever for a world champion. A record 11 different drivers won races that year, with 5 drivers actually winning more races than Rosberg. So, how did he do it? Well, Rosberg's only win came at the Swiss Grand Prix, but his consistency and frequent points finishes were enough to secure the championship. To this day, he holds the record for the fewest wins by a world champion in a single season. We all know how important sponsors are in Formula One, and many of us remember the 90s when cigarette brands were some of the biggest names in the sport, but when tobacco sponsorship was banned in the early 2000s, teams got, let's just say, a bit too creative. To get around the bans, some teams started using phantom sponsors. Basically, brand logos, designs, or code words that mimicked the original sponsors without directly naming them. British American Racing famously ran a livery that said "look alike," a clever nod to Lucky Strike. Ferrari used subtle barcodes instead of Marlboro logos to keep the design recognizable. And who could forget the Mission Winnow logos on the Ferraris from a few years ago? These phantom sponsors helped teams maintain their visual identity while technically staying within the rules. In the late 90s, there were suspicions and even some informal admissions that a few teams found clever, borderline illegal ways to help their drivers get the perfect launch off the line. Here's how it worked. F1 starts are controlled by a 5-light system. The lights come on one by one, and when they all go out, the race begins. Some teams developed internal systems that could detect the moment just before the lights would go out, usually by analyzing patterns in control signals or timing sequences from previous races. They'd then play a subtle ping or audio cue in the driver's ear just milliseconds before the lights actually went out. This gave the driver a split-second advantage, allowing them to launch the car at the exact moment the lights went out, often gaining crucial positions. Once officials caught on, it led to a rather funny situation at the 1999 European Grand Prix. We all know that Formula One is an incredibly expensive sport. Big teams almost always stay at the front, while smaller teams with limited budgets struggle to catch up. With the introduction of the cost cap, the field has closed a bit, at least on paper. But before the cost cap era, there was one team that failed to reach the top despite having the biggest budget on the grid, and that team was Toyota. Toyota had the largest budget in F1 history, yet they never won a single race. They entered the sport in 2002 with massive financial backing, reportedly spending around $400 to $500 million per season, more than even Ferrari or McLaren at the time. And despite the investment, Toyota failed to win a Grand Prix in 139 starts. They came close with several podiums and pole positions, but never managed to convert them into a victory. The team eventually withdrew from the sport in 2009 due to the global financial crisis. Their story remains a textbook example that money alone doesn't guarantee success in Formula One. Now, have you ever wondered how the entire F1 paddock transforms the vibe and infrastructure of a venue during a race weekend? Well, F1 teams build their hospitality centers and garage setups from scratch at almost every race, especially at flyaway events. The pit garages themselves are provided by the circuit, but teams bring and assemble everything inside. Walls, flooring, lighting, storage units, server racks, workbenches, tire heating systems, and more. It takes around 2 to 3 days to fully set up a garage with all the equipment, branding, and data systems. After the race, they dismantle everything and pack it up for the next venue. All of this involves hundreds of tons of gear. Logistics are planned months in advance, with some equipment shipped by sea and duplicate sets flown by air. This massive freight operation has become a major concern for environmentalists. Surprisingly, despite the roaring engines, actual on-track emissions make up only around 0.7% of F1's total carbon footprint. The real culprit is freight, transporting cars, equipment, and paddock setups to over 20 countries each season. Giant cargo planes like Boeing 747s haul tons of gear, and hundreds of personnel travel by commercial or private flights. The footprint is impacted massively when there are races on different continents, like the 3 US races held in non-consecutive order. F1 is aware of the problem, which is why they've pledged to become net zero by 2030, focusing on sustainable fuels and smarter logistics. And that's it for this video, guys. If you enjoyed it, give it a like, and don't forget to subscribe. We also have merch on the channel now, so if you're a true racing fan and want to support me, check out the store for some cool stuff. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.